King of the Pumpkins. Learn English subscription, self-access courses for professionals. Deep in the middle of the woods, said my mother, is the place where the King of the Pumpkins lives. A young boy and his cat try and find out what, if anything, is true about his mother's stories. Do the preparation task first. Then read the story and do the exercises. Show preparation. Deep in the middle of the woods, said my mother, is the place where the King of the Pumpkins lives. But pumpkins live in fields, not in forests, I said to my mother. She wouldn't listen to me. I'm telling you, she said, the King of the Pumpkins lives in the middle of the woods, and the woods that he lives in are the woods right next to our house, the woods you can see out of the window over there. She pointed with her hand to the woods that were, in fact, just outside the window behind our house. He doesn't live in a field like the other pumpkins, continued Mother, because he's not an ordinary pumpkin. He's the King Pumpkin. I shut up and decided to believe her, like you do when you're a kid. Firstly, I knew that it wasn't worth arguing with my mother. She always won. Secondly, when you're a kid, you always believe what grown-ups tell you, no matter how stupid it is. Like Santa Claus and stuff like that. Kids always believe it, even though they know it's stupid. Still, I decided to go and find the King of the Pumpkins, partly because I was bored, partly because I was curious, and also, of course, because I wanted to know if my mother really was talking nonsense or not. Mother often talked nonsense, I have to say that. There was the time she told me that the moon was made of cheese. I knew that was nonsense. Then there were all the stories she told me. Stories about frogs, princesses, princes and shoes. Stories about donkeys and unicorns, gnomes and elves, magic mirrors and magic cooking pots. Stories about why the stars are exactly the way they are, why the river that runs through our town has the name that it has. Stories about where the sun comes from, why the sky is so far away and why the elephant has a long trunk. Some of these stories, I think, might have been true. I was never sure, and it was difficult to find out. This time, though, with the story about the King of the Pumpkins, it was going to be easy to find out if she was telling the truth or not. Some people used to call my mother a witch, but I knew that she wasn't a witch. Just a bit strange perhaps. And she used to talk nonsense. Perhaps it was also because of the black cat we had. People say that witches always have black cats, and we had a black cat. But Mog wasn't the witch's cat. He was just a regular black cat. Mog could talk, though, I have to say that. Perhaps that isn't so regular in a cat, now I think about it. Anyway, I was telling you about the time I went to find the King of the Pumpkins. I set off with Mog the cat into the woods to look for the King of the Pumpkins. Even though we'd lived in that house near the woods all my life, I had never gone into the middle of the woods. This was the first time. I was glad I had Mog with me. I was a bit scared, even though I didn't really think that the King of the Pumpkins lived there. Watch out for the wolves, said Mog. Yes, and the grandmothers too, I joked. Let's not leave the path, said Mog. When people said my mother was a witch, I told them that witches don't have children. Yeah, they replied, that's true. But you look more like an elf than a regular kid. I looked in the mirror to see if I looked like an elf or not. I think I looked like a regular kid, but you never can tell really. Do you think he's real? I asked Mog. Who, the wolf? He certainly is, replied Mog. No, not the wolf. I know the wolf is real, I said to Mog. Sometimes I could hear the wolf howling at night. I knew he was real. No, not the wolf. The King of the Pumpkins. Do you think he's real? Don't know, said the cat. Guess we'll just have to find out. We walked on into the forest. The trees got taller and taller and taller. The path got narrower and narrower and narrower. What does he do, then, this king of the pumpkins?" asked Mog. "I don't know really," I said. "I guess he just kind of is head pumpkin, boss pumpkin. He decides on pumpkin rules and pumpkin laws, and punishes people who break them." "Oh, I see," said Mog. He was quiet for a bit, then said, "What kind of things are pumpkin rules then?" How big you can grow. What color you have to be. Stuff like that." "You are making this up, aren't you?" asked Mog. "Yeah," I said. Eventually, we got to the middle of the forest. At least, I think it was the middle of the forest, but it's difficult to say exactly. There was a clearing, a big space where there were no trees. In the middle of the clearing was the king of the pumpkins. At least, I think it was the king of the pumpkins. It looked like a man at first. He was quite tall and had legs and arms made from sticks. He was wearing an old black coat. His head was a pumpkin. His head was the biggest pumpkin I had ever seen. Me and Mog went up close to him. He didn't say anything. "Is that it?" asked Mog. "I guess so," I said. "Disappointing," said Mog. "Do you think he's the real king of the pumpkins?" I asked Mog. "Who knows?" replied the cat. As we walked back along the path out of the forest, I started to think about what was real and what was not. Could things that were made up also be true? What was the difference between story and history? One is real and the other isn't, is that it? What about all those other things that Mother talks about? Do you think they're real? I asked Mog. I'm not sure, said Mog. Those stories she tells sometimes, about why the night is black and the day is blue, about golden eggs and girls with golden hair, about why people have 10 fingers, 10 toes, 2 feet, 2 hands and 2 eyes. Sometimes I think she's crazy, and sometimes I think she might be right. I knew what Mog meant. I felt the same way. Perhaps the stories aren't true, I said, but what they mean is. Chris Rose. Elephants, bananas and Auntie Ethel. Learn English subscription, self-access courses for professionals. I looked at my watch and saw that it was going backwards. That's okay, I was thinking. If my watch is going backwards, then it means that it's early, so I'm not late for work at all. And then I woke up. Again. Do the preparation task first. Then read the story and do the exercises. Show preparation. So, I was walking along the street on my way to work as usual, but for some reason I was in a hurry. I wasn't really sure why I was in a hurry. And then I realized that I was holding a banana in my hand. I didn't know why I was holding a banana in my hand, but I knew that the banana was really important for some reason. The banana had something to do with the reason that I was late and in a hurry. It was a really important banana, only I didn't know why the banana was so important. Then I met my Auntie Ethel on the street corner. It was strange, because I hadn't seen Auntie Ethel for about 20 years. "Hello," I said to her. "I haven't seen you for about 20 years. I was really surprised to see her, but she didn't seem surprised to see me. "Be careful with that banana," she said. And I laughed, because I knew that it was a really important banana and, yes, I had to be careful with it. Auntie Ethel decided to walk to work with me, which was a problem because I was late and in a hurry, and she walked really, really slowly. Then, when we went round the corner, there was an elephant blocking the street. It depends where you live, I guess, but in Manchester it's pretty strange to see an elephant blocking the street. The strange thing was, though, that I wasn't really that surprised. Oh no. I was thinking. Another elephant blocking the street, what a pain. Especially this morning when I'm late and in a hurry, and with Auntie Ethel, and this really important banana. Then I started to get really worried, and then I woke up. I breathed a sigh of relief. Thank goodness for that, I thought. How strange dreams are. I wonder why I was dreaming about elephants and bananas and Auntie Ethel. The radio was already on. The radio comes on automatically at 7 o'clock to wake me up. I looked at the clock. It was already 7:10. I had to get up quickly. I went into the shower, and I could hear the news on the radio. I couldn't hear it very well, but there was a story on the news about an elephant that had escaped from a local circus. The elephant was causing a lot of trouble walking around the town. I thought this was an incredible coincidence, but then I realized that I had probably heard the news story on the radio when I was half asleep. That was why I was dreaming about an elephant. I quickly got dressed and went into the kitchen to get some coffee before I went to work. I worked for a film company. We get ideas for films and film scripts and then we try to produce the films. I thought a film about an elephant in Manchester would be great. There was a note on the kitchen table. It was from my wife. "Don't forget to buy bananas on your way home from work today," it said. It was a good job she had written the note, because I had completely forgotten about the fact that she has to eat a lot of bananas because of the crazy diet she's on at the moment. I tried to remember to buy bananas on my way home from work and rushed out of the house. As I was walking down the road my mobile rang. It was my mom. "Hello, Mom," I said. "What are you ringing at this time for?" "I've got some sad news, I'm afraid, love," she said. "Do you remember your Auntie Ethel?" "Just about," I said. "But I haven't seen Auntie Ethel for about 20 years. "Yes, well, she was very old, and I'm afraid she died last night. She'd been very ill, I told you a couple of weeks ago." "That's sad," I said. So there I was, walking down the street, late for work, thinking about Auntie Ethel and bananas and elephants, and of course I realized that it was all exactly the same as my dream. And as I started to think more about this, I realized I was walking more and more slowly, and I looked down and saw that the street was turning into hot, wet, sticky toffee, and it was sticking to my shoes, and the quicker I tried to walk, the slower I went. I looked at my watch and saw that my watch was going backwards. That's okay, I was thinking. If my watch is going backwards, then it means that it's early and not late, so I'm not late for work at all, and then I woke up. Again. Now this was strange. This was very, very strange. I got up and pinched myself to make sure I was really awake this time. Ouch! The pinch hurt. This meant I really was awake, and not dreaming this time. It was early. I wasn't late. The radio alarm clock hadn't come on yet. It was only 6:30. My wife was still at home. "Have you got enough bananas?" I asked her. She looked at me as if I was crazy. "What do you mean bananas?" she asked. "I thought you had to eat lots of bananas for your special diet." "I have no idea what you're on about," she said. "Why? Do you think I need to go on a diet? Do you mean that I'm fat?" No, not at all. By the way, have you heard anything about an elephant?" "An elephant?" "Yes, an elephant which has escaped from a circus. We live in Manchester. There aren't any circuses in Manchester. And there certainly aren't any elephants. Listen, are you suffering from stress or something? You're working too hard on that new film you're trying to produce, aren't you? Perhaps you should just stay at home today, take it easy." "Perhaps you're right," I said. "I'll just phone my mom." "Why do you need to phone your mom at 6:30 in the morning?" "Oh, nothing important," I said. "Well, I'm off to work. See you later, and take it easy today, okay?" "Okay." I phoned my mom. "Hello, Mom." "Hello, love. What are you calling this early for? Do you remember Auntie Ethel?" "Of course I do. but I haven't seen her for about 20 years or so. How is she? I've got no idea. Why on earth are you worried about your Auntie Ethel who you haven't seen for 20 years? Oh, nothing, bye. I made a cup of tea and went back to bed. Perhaps my wife was right. Perhaps I should just relax and take it easy today. I phoned up my boss. Listen, I said, I'm not feeling too good today, perhaps too much stress with the production schedule of the new film project. That's a shame, said my boss. We've just got a really exciting new idea for a film. I wanted to talk to you about it today. It's a kind of action movie. It's a great story. You have to hear this. An elephant escapes from a circus in a big city and it has eaten some strange, radioactive bananas, so it's going completely crazy. They eventually manage to stop the elephant by covering all the streets with sticky toffee, so that it can't walk. I see, I said. And where does my Auntie Ethel come into it? Auntie who? I hung up the phone and hoped that I would wake up soon. Chris Rose. Alberto's New Neighbors. Learn English subscription, self-access courses for professionals. Alberto took one look at his new neighbors and knew that his life was going to get more difficult. There they were, two of them, as big and as noisy as their car, and smelly and stupid as well. Do the preparation task first. Then read the story and do the exercises. Show preparation. Alberto took one look at his new neighbors and knew that his life was going to get more difficult. He watched them arrive in their big, noisy car and watched them get out. There they were, two of them, as big and as noisy as their car, and smelly and stupid as well. Terrible. He thought. How am I going to put up with them? He went to tell Mimi. Mimi was the friend he lived with. Have you seen the new neighbors? He asked her. No, she said. Who are they? Two of them. The ones we don't like. Big and noisy and stupid and smelly. Just like they always are. Oh no, said Mimi. How awful. Still, I suppose we can just ignore them. I suppose you're right, agreed Alberto. We'll just have to ignore them. For a few days, then, Alberto and Mimi tried to ignore their new neighbors. When the neighbors went out for a walk, Alberto and Mimi didn't say hello to them. When the neighbors were in their garden, Alberto and Mimi went inside. This was okay for a few days, but, perhaps inevitably, things didn't stay this way. One day, Alberto woke up from his sleep to find one of the neighbors in his garden. Mimi. He shouted. Have you seen this? He's in our garden. Look. How terrible, said Mimi. Let's call our staff and make sure they get rid of him immediately. Mimi went off to call their staff. 2 minutes later, Alberto and Mimi's head of staff was out in the garden trying to get rid of the unwelcome neighbor. Go on. He shouted. Get out of here. Go home. The neighbor didn't say anything but gave Alberto and Mimi's head of staff a dirty look, then he went back into his garden. Alberto and Mimi felt better and then asked their head of staff to prepare their lunch for them. However, it wasn't enough. Over the next few days, Alberto and Mimi often found one or other or both of their new neighbors walking around their own garden. It was terrible. To show how they felt, Alberto and Mimi went into their neighbor's garden at night, when the neighbors were inside, and broke all the flowers. The next morning one of the neighbors came to talk to Alberto. Hey. He said. Hey, you. Alberto ignored him, but he continued talking. You came into our garden last night and broke all the flowers. Alberto didn't say anything but gave his neighbor a dirty look. Now I'm in trouble. Continued his neighbor. They think I did it. Who are they? Asked Alberto. My owners, of course, replied the neighbor. Owners? Said Alberto. You have owners? Course we do, said his neighbor. don't you?" "Oh, no," replied Alberto. "We have staff." Alberto went to tell Mimi that the neighbors didn't have staff but owners. "That's not a surprise," said Mimi. "That explains everything. That's why they're so noisy and smelly and stupid. We need to make their owners become staff." The next day, Alberto and Mimi were actually very friendly with their new neighbors. They tried to explain how to make their owners become staff. "Listen," said Alberto to them. "It's very easy. First, understand that the house is your house, not theirs. And second," said Mimi, "make sure that you are always clean. Make sure they give you food whenever you want. Sit on the newspaper while they are reading it. Sleep as much as possible on their beds. And finally, try not to bark but to meow instead." But it was no good. The neighbors just didn't understand. After a week, they gave up. "It's no good," said Mimi. "They'll never understand. Dogs have owners, cats have staff." Chris Rose. The Golden Boys. Learn English subscription, self-access courses for professionals. Mr. and Mrs. Hamilton had two sons, Richard and Philip, who were both taller and friendlier than me. My parents liked them a lot. Why can't you be more like Richard and Philip? I hated them. Do the preparation task first. Then read the story and do the exercise. Show preparation. Every August for 12 years. Every August for 12 years we went to the same small town on holiday. Every August for 12 years we went to the same beach. Every August for 12 years my parents rented the same small house in the same small town near the same beach, so every morning of every August for 12 years I woke up and walked down to the same beach and sat under the same umbrella or on the same towel in front of the same sea. There was a small cafe on the beach where we sat every day, and every day Mr. Morelli in the cafe said good morning to my parents, and then always patted me on the head like a dog. Every day we walked down to our red and white umbrella. Every day my father sat on his deck chair and read the newspaper then went to sleep. Every day my mother went for a swim in the sea and then went to sleep. Every lunchtime we ate the same cheese sandwiches which my mother made, and then every afternoon we went up to the cafe and ate an ice cream while my parents talked to Mr. Morelli about the weather. Every summer for 12 years I sat there and read books and sometimes played volleyball with some of the other boys and girls who were there, but I never made any friends. It was so boring. Every August for 12 years the same family sat next to us. They were called the Hamiltons. We had a red and white umbrella, they had a green one. Every morning my parents said good morning to Mr. and Mrs. Hamilton, and Mr. and Mrs. Hamilton said good morning to my parents. Sometimes they talked about the weather. Mr. and Mrs. Hamilton had two sons. Richard was the same age as me, and his brother Philip was 2 years older than me. Richard and Philip were both taller than me. Richard and Philip were very friendly and both very handsome. They were much friendlier and more handsome than me. They made friends with everyone and organized the games of volleyball on the beach or swimming races in the sea with the other children. They always won the games of volleyball and the swimming races. My parents liked Richard and Philip a lot. Why can't you be more like Richard and Philip? They said to me. Look at them. They make friends with everyone. They are polite, good boys. You just sit here reading books and doing nothing. I, of course, hated them. Richard and Philip, Richard and Philip, Richard and Philip. It was all I ever heard from my parents every August for 12 years. Richard and Philip were perfect. Everything about them was better than anything about me. Even their green beach umbrella was better than our red and white one. I was 16 years old the last summer we went there. Perfect Richard and Perfect Philip came to the beach one day and said that they were going to have a barbecue at lunchtime. They were going to cook for everyone. Forget your cheese sandwiches, they laughed. Come and have some hamburgers or barbecue chicken with us. We're going to cook. My parents, of course, thought this was wonderful. Look at how good Richard and Philip are. They're going to do a barbecue and they've invited everybody. You couldn't organize a barbecue. Every summer for 12 years, on the other side of my family, sat Mrs. Moffat. Mrs. Moffat was a very large woman who came to the same beach every summer for 12 years on her own. Nobody knew if she had a husband or a family, but my parents said that she was very rich. Mrs. Moffat always came to the beach wearing a large hat, a pair of sunglasses and a gold necklace. She always carried a big bag with her. She never went swimming, but sat under her umbrella reading magazines until lunchtime when she went home. Richard and Philip, of course, also invited Mrs. Moffat to their barbecue. Richard and Philip's barbecue was, of course, a great success. About 20 people came, and Richard and Philip cooked lots of hamburgers and chicken and made a big salad and brought big pieces of watermelon, and everyone laughed and joked and told Mr. and Mrs. Hamilton how wonderful their sons were. I ate one hamburger and didn't talk to anybody. After a while, I left, and made sure that nobody saw me leave. Mrs. Moffat ate 3 plates of chicken and 2 hamburgers. After that she said she was very tired and was going to go and have a sleep. She walked over to her umbrella and sat down on her deck chair and went to sleep. When she woke up later, everybody on the beach was surprised to hear her screaming and shouting. "My bag! My bag!" she shouted. "It's gone! It's gone!" Everybody on the beach ran over to Mrs. Moffat to see what the problem was. "Someone has taken my bag!" she screamed. "Someone has stolen my bag." "Impossible," said everybody else. "This is a very safe, friendly beach. There are no thieves here." But it was true. Mrs. Moffat's big bag wasn't there anymore. Nobody had seen any strangers on the beach during the barbecue, so they thought that Mrs. Moffat had perhaps taken her bag somewhere and forgotten it. Mr. Morelli from the cafe organized a search of the beach. Everybody looked everywhere for Mrs. Moffat's big bag. Eventually, they found it. My father saw it hidden in the sand under a deck chair. A green deck chair. Richard and Philip's deck chair. My father took it and gave it back to Mrs. Moffat. Everybody looked at Richard and Philip. Richard and Philip, the golden boys, stood there looking surprised. Of course, they didn't know what to say. Mrs. Moffat looked in her bag. She started screaming again. Her purse with her money in it wasn't in the big bag. "My purse!" she shouted. "My purse is gone. Those boys have stolen it. They organized a barbecue so they could steal my purse." Everybody tried to explain to Mrs. Moffat that this couldn't possibly be true, but Mrs. Moffat called the police. The police arrived and asked Golden Richard and Golden Philip lots of questions. Richard and Philip couldn't answer the questions. Eventually, they all got into a police car and drove away to the police station. I sat there, pretending to read my book and trying to hide a big, fat purse under the sand on the beach. That was the last summer we went to the beach. My parents never talked about Richard and Philip again. Chris Rose